referencing the Māori trades and training, what does she say to the 1,000 people who could have been supported into trades that she now has chosen to leave without those very same opportunities that were afforded to them in previous years as a result of the cuts that she has made?
Well, ending time-limited funding isn't technically a cut. It's just not, it is not finding additional funding to fund it. And those 1,000 people, there's a number of programs that they can transfer into that are on offer around the country. The member may also appreciate that there are regional contracts available and some of the providers may choose to go down that route.
I've got a bit of a line of people waiting for questions. Just, Madam Mayor, is yours a supplementary or primary? If yes, to give me one or two.
Oh, right. It is two.
It's supplementary. Okay, great. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, Minister Koutou Katoa. So it's just running off the lines of questioning just prior related to Māori and young Māori particularly. And I wanted to just get more of a discussion, Minister, around because the context particularly for Māori overrepresented in the system and the way in which the engagement often doesn't work so well. What are your, in terms of practical outcomes, would you see in terms of to achieve for Māori who are overrepresented in the system? And I wanted to specifically talk to the automated decision-making element of it, but maybe I think it's just generic, Minister, on when you've got an overrepresentation, you've got a difficult and sad history in terms of the way in which Māori are engaged, particularly when we know in the systemic of it, there is racial or cultural bias. Those are difficult things to contend with. How do you think you're going to reach those outcomes that are hopefully going to lift, and yet we know that it's a real tough set of circumstances, particularly for young and Māori who do not engage well or easily and find it in a hostile environment?
Thanks. So the first thing I would say, the automated decision-making standard was introduced and approved by Cabinet back in 2022. So this is about extending the use of it. I might pass to Viv just to kind of explain a little bit more about, you know, what it means for the front line. And rather than me repeat what I've already said about the employment initiatives and young Māori, I'll hand over to Viv.
Thank you, Minister. Ours is a very manual system. So everything we do is in person on the phone. So it's quite a manual processing. So all the decisions, because of that, we have a processing centre in the background. They do all of our processing because we don't have straight through processing. There's no way in our current system to automate decisions based on both our legislation, our manuals and practices and procedures, and the way we do our business. So that's why we've got 490 new people. We're delighted, but actually in the background, we've got a whole lot of people that do processing of manual things. So in Whangarei, where the member is, and we've got a processing centre there that does childcare and it's stuff. They still have the old paper-based system because we don't have an automated approach like most other agencies actually today. So when we talk about modernisation, some of it just bringing it up to standard for today, so we can actually maximise and optimise the people we've got to help people into work rather than do processing in the back. And I think between Simon and Mel and Sash, they'll do any other intricacies of Ledge and other things in relation to it, but I think that's it, Minister. It's really just putting our people on the things we want them to do.
Yeah, and just coming back to case management, for example, 44% of those in case management are Māori, and if I've got the stat right, 38% of those on the job seeker benefit are Māori.
Yep.
So 39, so it is slightly higher as a percentage, but again, that shouldn't be surprising given that it's the most effective intervention that we have.
Laura.
One other thing I could add, Maria Mero, is many of the services that we provide. So if we look at youth services as an example, MSD isn't actually the provider of those services. So for young, vulnerable Māori as an example, many of those services and the work that they do is done through a third party. Many of the providers are community-based providers in their local communities. So we're not the total service delivery of or engagement with every person or every client that we deal with, and our staff recognise at times, particularly for young people, they may be better served by our provider in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister. So you talked a little bit around the stats around welfare dependency, but we also know that children that grow up in welfare dependent homes have a higher risk of becoming dependent themselves. But we know that like the likes of attending ECE help actually reduce those rates. Can you tell me what in this budget is targeted all for children and how you plan on tackling some of those?
Yeah, so as I've said previously, one of the other priorities for me is reducing the number of children in benefit-dependent households for that very point that we know their life outcomes, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's their income, and contact with the justice system, either as a victim or a perpetrator of crime. So significantly worse life outcomes. So we do have a particular focus on job seekers that have children and making sure that they are prioritised in the investment strategy. So basically every year we do an investment strategy and that prioritises who to work with. And unfortunately, we've seen the number of children in benefit-dependent households increase over the last 6 to 7 years. And that's a trend that I want to see reverse. There's also cross-agency work around reducing material hardship. And that is one of the 3 priorities in the child and youth wellbeing strategy. And that's not just me as an individual minister, but crosses into other ministers like the Minister for Early Childhood Education, as well as Ministers of Health and things like that. So we recognise that in order to really break some of those patterns around children in welfare-dependent households and children experiencing material hardship, we have to go beyond individual government agencies.
New question, Tanya.
Thank you, Minister. Now, you've probably already touched on this a little bit. How else is MSD investing in its systems and processes and services, and how can the client expect to benefit from this? What changes will they see from the investment?
Yeah, so as I said, what used to be called Te Pai Tāwhiti, or the Services for the Future, is a 9-year program of work. We're in year 3. And so I might just hand over in terms of some of the detail of what that will mean. One of the initiatives, for example, is digital employment, which will make it so much easier for a person on job seeker benefit to be supported.
I can start and then maybe Viv can. So this is a multi-year program, as the Minister said, started work on this 2 or 3 years ago and will continue into the future as well. We've got some budget money this year and ongoing budget money, but it's been withheld for commercial sensitivity reasons, obviously. But if you look at something like digital employment, in order to deliver digital employment, we'll also have to do some foundational work. So, for example, we have to get client authentication sorted. We have to think about how we do data transfers, how we make sure the data is integrated well. So at the same time, you might be thinking about a new digital employment service, which will mean that we can get better engagement between employers and job seekers without us necessarily having to be in the middle of that. So if people want to do job matching at midnight, then they can do job matching at midnight. What we'll also be able to see is where we've got clients, for example, who are struggling to find work. They might be applying for the wrong job. Is their CV fit for purpose? Are they getting the right support? Do they need a driver's license? So we'll be able to see some of those things, as well as engage in a much more modern way that job seekers expect to engage, and employers in this world. But at the same time you do that, we'll also be doing what we call value drops to make sure that we're modernising the underlying systems. Our staff have, as Viv alluded to, very complex systems that they have to work, often manual, or multiple screens that they're kind of navigating. MSD's Services for the Future aims to completely re-platform all of those, so that there's a much more...
Is it just me, or does Louise look like she has absolutely no idea what's going on?
Much easier. So we have to be fit for purpose. We have to allow our clients to be able to engage with us digitally, and we have to get out of their way. And then for the clients who need the most support, through case management as an example, we have to be available for them without being caught between the two.
Yeah.
Jenny Ellison.
Thank you. A full-time median income earner will be $978.40 worse off than was forecast compared to last year's budget. How does lower wages help people who are struggling in a cost of living crisis?
Well, I'm not sure where the member gets her figures from. Our focus
1%
is
lower growth. So real wage growth is forecast to be almost 1% lower across the next 3 years in comparison to budget 2024. That was from the budget.
And initiatives like Investment Boost are about lifting wages. And as I said before, I would love to be sitting here in very different economic times, but that's the reality of what we have inherited. So we have to deal with the reality. We have to deal with the underlying circumstances like high government spending and wasteful spending, which is why each budget we look at what are the opportunities to save, because those are the things that take the pressure off. They are the things that are creating economic harm. And as I said before, the economic recovery, the growth forecasts are lower than we would like. But if we look a few years out, that growth is continuing to increase And those are measures that we've taken in this budget that will get us there.
Given that minimum wage growth is actually lower than inflation, our lowest wage earners are now worse off in real terms. How does that affect people who are struggling to pay for $16 or $17 for a block of butter?
Well, that's why we are absolutely focused on the cost of living. Priority number one is the cost of living in the economy. So, as I said, we have to deal with the realities of what people are facing. That is why part of the budget was an amendment to an increase in the Working for Families threshold. So 140,000 families benefit from that. We have aimed initiatives in Budget 25 at the low and middle income households. And we have to do it in a way that we are very, very carefully balancing pressure on the cost of living. And that's why some of the initiatives, like the Working for Families, for example, have been in that area. Is there more to do? Absolutely. But the cost of living has to be priority number one, because that is the thing that is still causing significant pain out there for individuals. But as I say, there's other work across the government that covers this area that don't sit within my responsibilities.
So unemployment is forecast to be higher for longer as a result of Budget 2025. What is it in your budget that actually provides any incentives or supports for people to get into work? And again, new initiatives, not previous government.
Yeah, so as I said, the economic conditions that we find ourselves in, that we have inherited, are challenging.
No, I
And
just want
I'm
to
not-
point back to that. It's
Yeah,
a
well,
result
budget
of your budget.
2025 and the unemployment rate that we have didn't spring up overnight.
That's not addressing my question.
It has been coming for many years, very much based on the decisions that the previous government made.
No,
I'm
but
focused on how to solve
your
the
budget
problem,
increased
which is
unemployment.
why we have an Invest to Save, which is about providing opportunities for more people to get back into
Do you not
employment.
accept that your budget increased unemployment?
I accept the conditions that we have inherited. Budget 2025 is dealing with the economic circumstances we have, making choices about how to go forward, how to grow the economy, how to ensure that more businesses have confidence to take on staff. That is what reduces the number of people who are out of work and lifts wages.
Do you agree that the choices that you have
Last one.
made have entrenched the recession and made it last for longer,
No, I don't.
causing people more hardship in New Zealand?
I fully reject that. We are dealing with the circumstances that we inherited. We have now had two budgets, both based on dealing with the cost of living, which we absolutely must do because families are still doing it incredibly tough out there. I'd love to be sitting here with a different set of economic circumstances, but when you come in as an incoming government, you don't pick the circumstances. You go into it with your eyes wide open and you then deal with the problems that you are faced with. That's exactly what we do. That's why the budget is focused on economic growth, to create more opportunities, more jobs and higher wages. That's what the budget is all about.
I have a question, or a couple of questions actually. What impact will the accommodation supplement, adjusting area boundaries have?
I thought the member might be interested in that.
Very interested in this one.
So there was a petition a while back from a gentleman in Queenstown that called for changes to the accommodation supplement boundaries. This is another cost of living initiative that's in Budget 2025. We expect that about 4,000 people will see the benefit of this because, for example, around Queenstown, there will be areas that were previously deemed to be rural that are now urban. And of course, the costs of housing in those areas are significantly higher than they were. So that's why we have deliberately made the choice in this budget to change the accommodation supplement boundaries. There's obviously more territorial authorities that will be affected. So yes, it will benefit Queenstown, but it will, I think it's about 45 territorial authorities that will be affected. And for the many people that have written in support of that petition, I know they will be pleased that we are making this change.
I can say, I think there's 45 areas across the country, very pleased, and I can say I jumped out of an aeroplane in opposition to help bring attention to this issue in the Queensland area, so people were very pleased in my area, so thank you, Minister.
Your jump was worthwhile.
It was a worthwhile parachute jump, that one. Thank you. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you. I've got a series of questions on the changes to the eligibility of the accommodation supplement and income relief subsidy that will produce over $150 million in savings. And I wanted, that will leave 7,000 people receiving the accommodation supplement $100 worse off each week, according to MSD's own analysis. I wanted to check if you stand by your own statement that you gave to me in the House during question time last week, that quote says, in relationship to this policy. And what we do know is those households who have the lowest incomes are the most harshly affected by the cost of living crisis, which is why we needed to make changes to this regime to ensure that we alleviate pressure for low income households. How is leaving 7,000 families $100 worse off each week, quote, alleviating pressure for low-income households with this regime.
So this is a budget 24 measure. Mr. Chair, if you're
It's part of
happy
the
for me
budget
to,
as well.
if you're happy for me to answer it,
In your program.
I can do so. Great. Okay. So just to be clear, the member's asking about a budget 24 measure that we have been in the process of passing legislation for recently. And this is a situation where prior to the legislation passing, not all borders were taken into account. And most New Zealanders would think when housing assistance, yes, I'm providing some context for those who are
I know the bill.
watching.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but people who are watching the live stream won't necessarily know the bill. And because it's budget 24 rather than budget 25, it's useful to provide some context. So the intention was, in terms of the calculation of housing assistance, all housing income is taken into consideration, including income from borders number 1 and borders number 2. The other significant change is that you shouldn't be able to have the accommodation supplement or housing assistance from 2 different directions in the same household. So the other change is someone who is paying board receiving the accommodation supplement. At the same time, the person who is running the household who is taking in board was also getting the accommodation supplement. That clearly doesn't make sense, which is why we have changed the legislation. I do accept that there is an impact, but it is really important that we have a system for housing assistance that works and is fair and that taxpayers would expect, because at the end of the day, it is the money they earn when they go to work that pays for the housing assistance. And when we are making savings, we are looking at ways to save money from government spending, to reduce government spending, to alleviate the cost of living pressure. That is exactly what we're doing, and I accept that the member doesn't like this policy, but it's about thinking of the bigger picture where we have to reduce government spending in order to alleviate the cost of living pressure across the board. And the member that was previously sitting to his right was particularly interested in the cost of living crisis, as I'm sure he is.
A supplementary, and then I've got a handful of those. Was you wrong to say that this regime would alleviate pressure for low-income households when the advice by MSD shows the exact opposite?
Well, there are hundreds of thousands of households who are doing it tough right now because of the cost of living. That's why our government's made it. As I've just said, well, the member himself highlighted the savings that it will deliver. And when we have to look at government spending, we have to find savings. That's exactly what we've done.
Okay. Was MSD correct in identifying that older and disabled people will be disproportionately affected due to the loss in accommodation supplement and income-related rent subsidies as part of these reforms?
Well, if they have borders at the moment that they are not, is not being counted as part of their housing assistance.
Was MSD correct in saying that the savings that the minister is claiming that she's going to have could have been overestimated as a result of people now needing to access hardship assistance and things like emergency housing as a direct result of the negative financial consequences brought by this policy?
Yeah, that's why I've asked MSD to monitor the impacts of the policy. But as I said, first and foremost, budget 24, of which this is a measure, was about dealing with the cost of living crisis. So every agency was asked to find savings to reduce government spending in its entirety, which therefore takes pressure off high interest rates, inflation, and direct costs that households face.
Can you name one part of the changes she made to the eligibility of the accommodation supplement and this reforms, part of the budget legislation, that alleviates pressure for low-income households?
I've already answered that question.
Can you just name one?
Well, I've just already answered it.
Supplementary.
You can't name one.
Supplementary.
I've answered it. I've told you two.
You've literally
No, that's not-
identified
that's-
a single measure that helps
It's
low-income
not a debating
families.
session.
I've got
You're
a
misleading low-income
question
people.
on this. I pointed out in the debate on this act, and because of that report, that if I have borders, I'm actually allowed to deduct that I have those borders without any tax implications. So a middle-class family can have those borders, but a working-class family that can't make ends meet now can't. How is that giving people a hand up and alleviating poverty?
Well, the clear difference is one is being paid by taxpayers. So where there is housing assistance, where hardworking New Zealanders get up and go to work and pay tax, their expectation is that the housing assistance that is provided is fair. And as I said, I've highlighted two examples where it's clearly not, and we need to ensure in spending taxpayer money on their behalf that it is fair and reasonable. And in this case, it clearly isn't. If you have a border, then that income from that border should be taken into consideration in terms of your eligibility for housing assistance. I accept that the member doesn't like it, but what we are trying to do is reduce government spending overall to reduce the cost of living pressures
My
for New
supplementary
Zealanders.
is, do you accept people on accommodation supplement are often the hardest working New Zealanders we have? They're just not making ends meet because wages are so low, and that you have cut off a source of them being able to make ends meet?
Well, the member wasn't here when I answered the question around wages, so I'm not going to
Well, they're two are combined
cover
because
ground.
accommodation supplement is for the purpose. It recognises people cannot make
absolutely.
ends meet in this country despite working really hard.
Yeah,
Do you accept these are the hardest working New Zealanders that you have cut off at the knees by this policy?
No, I don't agree with that. And as I said, we have a responsibility to all taxpayers, and that is the focus. Unfortunately, we have inherited some very challenging times with the cost of living crisis. We are taking measures both in Budget 24, like this one is, as well as Budget 25 to alleviate some of that pressure. But we have to ensure that when there is support and assistance that is funded by taxpayers, it is fair. And if people are getting income, housing income, that isn't included in their eligibility, well, that's clearly not fair. That's why we've made this change.
Right. Howdy, folks. Sorry I'm very, very late. I was stuck in a meeting, but I just want to address what Louise just said. I'm on supported living. I receive an accommodation supplement. I smashed up my legs doing things like forestry and stuff like that. I can't work full time, okay? Now, for her to come out and say that people that receive accommodation supplement are not some of the hardest working people in New Zealand, I flatly refuse to accept that premise. I mean, okay, so I pay board, right, because it's cheaper to have a house than it is to pay rent. Okay, my family got very lucky. I'm a member of a big family. We worked collectively to buy the house I'm sitting in right now. Partly due to in part due to the fact that my grandparents, who sadly passed away, put aside some money so we could put a down payment on. So big family, right? We've got a mortgage. We're all paying it off together using accommodation supplement because some of us are disabled. Some of us are not able to work full time. I have an older sister who now works full time, but before she was receiving accommodation supplement, she was taking care of the board. Okay, and these are the types of families like mine that are going to be impacted by what Louise is doing. Again, it is cheaper to board and work collectively as a family than it is to rip apart a family and put them out renting different properties, because that's what we were doing before. Okay.
Yeah,
now,
100%.
It's cheaper for the family, but it's worse off for anyone that could be their landlord.
Yep, it is worse for the landlords. It is good. It's good for me because we've saved a ton of money doing this. Right? Being able to put down that down payment. Yeah, and again, my sister, when she was receiving accommodation supplement because she was on job seekers for a while, because I live in a rural area. Okay. You can't tell me with a straight face that she doesn't work hard. She was cleaning police stations, cleaning toilets, cleaning everything. You know, she was driving from Masterton and back, cleaning, breaking her back, doing volunteer work. Now, Louise is going to try and tell me with a straight face that my sister is lazy.
Yeah, being a commercial cleaner is not an easy job, but being there, done that too.
Same here. Same here. And I've done forestry part-time as well, you know, while receiving accommodation supplement. Am I lazy? Has she ever done breaking out before? Has she ever had to carry big giant chains and big chainsaws and get paid very little for it?
But
No, she isn't.
100%. Though, every Samoan family in Paurua that works, Taylor Preston's Meat Works.
Part Samoan,
family that's there. Okay, so that very house that bitch is sitting in is cleaned by the same people that work at that meatworks. And they go there and they clean that place so that it's nice and spotless, so she can sit her white ass down there in that room. They're lazy, and those poor bastards have to pay secondary and third tax. So they work all day and all night. That supplement thing, man, it's just like it's the cheapest thing that the taxpayer can pay.
Yeah, I'm saving the taxpayer money.
Yes.
Paying for a mortgage rather than paying rent. I'm saving you money. That's why we did this. We're saving money. we don't require as much an accommodation supplement living like this.
Yep.
No, it's just easy, but it's because she's no lived experience.
Yeah.
That's like, like what this is the thing what we were talking about earlier, and I think they all felt full foul of it too. Like I've been blown away. Like something that is just the other day we went for When we go down and get our fish and chips, we walk down the Wānanga. We walk around the Wānanga, the Maori University in Otaki. And when they say that there's not opportunities for Maoris, this is the cleanest university in all of New Zealand. There is not one piece of rubbish on the whole thing. It's because they have pride in that university. Their university is the only university in New Zealand that has full enrolment. Their university is just to die for. I wish I was married. If I was young again, I wish I was married just to go to that university, right?
Hey, you can go to Te Wānanga. You don't have to be Māori to go to Te Wānanga. That's open to everyone.
Point is, if they want to do something with Maori, is just tell them that they are. Do you know what I mean? And then take them down there for like I go around there. I've been around the first moment I'm walking around it. I can feel the place drawing me in. I am knowledge. I will, like it's wrapping itself around you. There's nothing wrong with like, a lot of these kids. They've had a colonial education. It's like a lot of them will seek employment if they just get opportunity to go and get back in touch with the whenua and get in there and learn their cultural heritage just a little bit. I know the university doesn't just teach that, but like there's shit tons of things to do. And it's like Maori's going streets ahead. It's like, I don't know what you do with Pākehā kid today in this country. I don't think Maori's the problem. I think it's the Pākehā kid today in this country. What is our identity? Like, because we don't, like.
I don't know where you're going with.
No, but I don't know. Like, what do you want? What do you want to do? What's your career? What do you want to? Like, when they're talking about,
But that's the thing with
we
all
can
kids.
digitalize you and all this. When I was a little kid, you either wanted to be a farmer, a builder, a fireman, a policeman. Like we don't have those identities anymore, and they're saying we don't need those jobs anymore. And then they're saying do a job. What's the fucking job? Like like if I'm a young person and I'm like, what is my job that you want me to do? That's the thing. And that's why because Laura, when I was blown away today, like they just say that kids from 18 to 26, they're so lost. I get why they're lost because I wouldn't know how to navigate this world. And when I look at that person that's in charge and she's the one that's like telling you what to do, I don't know what she's talking about. I wouldn't know how to please her.
Yeah, her policy, that the changes to the accommodation supplement, I put it in the chat, will impact families that live collectively together. Will impact families that we have multiple generations living in one house. Some of them may be disabled. They require things like accommodation supplement. This legislation is going to impact them. This legislation is going to break apart families for the worse. It's going to make things much more expensive for the taxpayer.
Yeah, and that's the sickest part because the thing is we got there's a lot of those places that were always just generational employment, like you just mentioned forestry. But what about the mill? Like those mill towns, like they'll only be surviving some of those families and being able to stay together like they expected they were going to do for another generation, and the mill's gone. Now they've actually just completely shattered them with taking away that supplement, haven't they? It's just gone.
Yeah. Yep, like you said, this legislation will also break apart low-income communities, right? Communities that tend to work collectively and live collectively together, right? This will break them apart as well. Rural towns like Ikitahuna will be impacted by the changes to the accommodation supplement.
So you can go and work in a cafe in Queenstown, I guess.
Yeah, and break apart my family in the process and lose the house that I'm sitting in.
Yeah.
It's just
and still not be able to afford rent on a house down there.
Correct.
Because locals are priced out of Queenstown.
It used to be a 101 rule that you didn't actually go through and slash things when we're in a recession because you're actually cutting off money going into the economy. Like that accommodation supplement, you guys won't have, and low-income people you don't have much at the end of the week. You go through your entire wages and it goes out, as much as it's frustrating, it goes out into the real economy.
Yep.
It keeps everything functioning and everything working. If you cut that off, it actually restricts the real economy, and then you're actually creating more of a recession. That was what I was talking about with that Ruth Richards thing. You're actually increasing the recession, and then you're putting money into ridiculous things like we talked about earlier, with those patient sciencey things where you're setting up these agri-zero things where you're investing in startups that are not even New Zealand based, and all of these crazy things. And it's like, take all of that money and put it in here and put it into our people.
You want to know the real kicker? She knew because I actually read some of the proposals for the policies that she's talking about. She said that I didn't need to consult with Māori because I know better. She said that in their proposal. She's like, no, I don't need to work with iwi and hapu on this. I know better. My changes are going to benefit them, actually.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier with the farmers. They've created all of this stuff that actually going to destroy cows, destroy soil, destroy export market, and costing millions of dollars, and we don't want it. And it's going to cost us $30 a cow to lose every 6 months to lose our export market. And then it looks like it stays in the beef and it stays in the milk, so it's corrupting everything. And it's like you've spent millions of dollars on it and you haven't even gone to farmers to ask them if they want it. And this government, they think they know better than everybody else because they're so special. And I don't understand where it's coming from.
But
I don't know either. I mean, you look at, again, I can talk about the huge effects that this bill's going to have. It may seem like a little simple change, but the impact will be felt. This is going to impact farmhands as well, right? Yeah. In rural communities, because they often tend to live collectively, and a lot of them tend to be low income and rely on government handouts from time to time, especially when you're on the off season, right? Sharing gangs, yep.
Yeah, in some of the shittiest houses too. Yep. But it's going to be, there's so many sectors, like all the fruit pickers and all that sort of thing. And see, this isn't good for them. And it comes back to, like, you know, when I went to that meeting with Luxon, when before he was actually minted as Prime Minister, and he said how he'd cut the economy seats on the airline, and how cool that was because, you know, like, got rid of the economy seats. And then he was being lobbied by so many people about fruit pickers and stuff like that, and he said, well, we don't have many fruit pickers. And I just started with the obvious question, you know, Mr. Luxon, do you think when you cut the economy seats on a national carrier, that meant that a lot of, you know, people that would have come and worked as fruit pickers just can't come because they can't afford the plane? And it's just like malfunction, man. They had to turn them off and wait 3 minutes and then turn them back on again until all the lights started flashing because he just couldn't fucking answer. And the thing is that's what she does. She just her thing is when she can't answer a question, she goes, well, that's what the government inherited. And, you know, like, we've watched it for like the whole time. Like she's filibustered this whole thing with we've inherited this. That's just the reality of living in a struggling economy. And I really should know it off by heart, word by word, but it's actually that shit. It's like you can't quite remember it.
You need to stop swearing. You and Sam, next time, you have to set up a bingo card and you have to have a every time they say, oh, we inherited this economy, and, you know, find the key lines, because you'd be drunk within the first half hour.
But they can't even use that line anymore because they've set the budget. So basically it's like the blame Labour, that's gone. They can't use that anymore.
It's been 15 months. You've been in a year and a half. You can't keep saying it's somebody else's problem.
It's somebody else's fault.
And like
Dolly did it. Yeah, that was
like we said, the exports for agriculture are at the highest, so therefore we should be doing better. So what's going on in their budget that money that should be coming into the country and into the community, where is it going?
Yeah.
They have to stop
To
borrowing.
landlords.
All the economists are saying that we've borrowed more money now than what we did
Under Ardern.
under the COVID time. So, like, you know, like, this isn't, you know, the drapes.
No conservative.
Nothing's adding up, man.
No conservativeness at all in this. It's just a radical right wing, and I don't.
I reckon even like you guys had it the other week, where it's like even if they had just gone through with that pay equity thing, that would have injected like $4 billion into the economy at the bottom, because all those female employees would have been paid properly. That would have the economy would be booming, man. Like, it's just so simple. They could have just. It's basically you could have lit the thing up, you know, put some F gas in the bottom, just pay women fairly. It's not that hard. But
just pay everyone fairly.
Well, that's pretty much all I have to say tonight. I just wanted to rant about Louise being wrong about the accommodation supplement.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's not self-interest either, because it's like I know that the people that have been the most kindest to me when I worked, my toughest work was working in the meatworks when we were contracting, and those people were so kind to me, and they really, like, I just don't want to see it. I want to see those people get more, not less, and now they're going to get less, and it's so shit, because they're hard-working people and kind, loving.
Oh, I could tell you, Louise could not handle a day doing their job.
No, not
She
going.
couldn't handle a day doing any real job.
Yeah, not going from those blast chillers out into the shitty Southerly in Wellington. No.
I mean, she's welcome to borrow my forestry gear and have a crack at breaking out if she wants. I mean, I'll be sitting at the top of the hill with my bag of popcorn.
She couldn't even lift the chainsaw. Come on.
No.
No.
So one thing
hazard.
one thing that she said that was really concerning to me, and I know I joked about her being a psychopath, but the way she said it was that I'm trying to reduce the amount of children that are living in what was it exactly? That are living in basically where your parents are on a benefit. I'm trying to reduce the number of children in those households.
Yeah.
And that has really nasty overtones to me. And
it does.
I don't know quite how she meant it. Like, is she trying to ensure that she gets mums back to work, or is she trying to do something to reduce people having children?
I mean, we already know she's anti-family.
Or I was going to say, or is she just aiming to take children off of people on benefits and put them into better homes?
Yeah, it's just, I think there are racist undertones in what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a few years ago a young girl and it was exposed on YouTube where they basically took her first child before she hadn't done anything. They took it from her at birth, and they were trying to take her second as well. And it was really horrific. And you see those sorts of things, and it's you break people. Like, how are you going to be a normal person when you've had your child taken and you haven't done anything? And I'm really concerned about where this is going. And
yeah,
there just seems to be a cruelty. And because it's a woman, we're not allowed to say that, I guess.
Oh, shit. How many women are sitting here in the chat? How many women are here tonight? This is like a majority woman panel. We have the authority to pull out the barbecue and grill Louise.
Yeah.
If you can treat me like a woman, then I'll treat you like a man. That's my philosophy lately.
No, but even the old gents that you used to get, the old conservatives, or like you see older farmers and things like that, they're always so polite and caring and looking out for people. And so the sort of urban, sort of cruel, professional managerial class, I think they call them, and there's they just have really no compassion for anybody else. They just seem to see their own thing as the most important, and they just should control everybody. And if you just let them control everybody, then everything will be perfect.
Does anyone know what she did before she did this?
I can look it up.
I was going to say, I have no clue, but Sam would probably know.
Watch them fade in.
He'll be pulling his hair out at all of the tangents that I'm going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Editing for editing. If he is editing this into clips, I'm sorry, Sam. This is going to suck for you.
What was she doing? She Louise McGill. Okay, that was her name. She went to law school but did not achieve the minimum grades to enter a second year. Oh, that sucks. Dropped out of university age 19. Founded a management consulting firm. The firm provided event and project management services and its clients, including Air New Zealand's Russell McVeigh. Oh, fuck, McVeigh. Datacom Group. Oh, no, hell, no. Oh, okay, no, I was thinking of a different McVeigh. Okay, no, Russell McVeigh is actually a legit institution.
Okay.
She studied at the Waikato Management School and graduated with a Master's of Business Administration. Okay, so that's her background. So she failed law school and then got a management degree.
Because that's what you do, I guess.
Yeah.
So she's the manager at your job that you don't like.
Harbours of resentment.
She is technically the professional managerial class then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lady who's written a book on she calls them the PMC, and she's Catherine Liu. She's really good. There's probably a few interviews on her on YouTube, but I really like her. But because she's a university lecturer herself, but she comes from a working class background, so she's always sort of talking about all of these people that she works with, like the wrong class, and she's so she's.
It's weird because I come from an upper middle class family, right? My dad was an optometrist. He worked as optometry clinic in Masterton, ended up a hut for 30 years, right? I had a great upbringing, but I've worked working class jobs and I've got working class relatives, and I've spent time in working class groups, and I've received a working class income. So, it's just a matter of just, even if you're not born into that, you can put in the bare effort to get to know people that are from that, work with them, eat with them, talk to them.
The other one that's really interesting on it is David Graeber. He died a few years ago, but he was an anarchist sociologist, and he talked about the caring classes and how the professional managerial class type people really hate the people that actually do things, the things that we actually need. So the nurses, the farmers, the people who do the roads, anybody who does something practical that is needed in society, they sort of look down on with disdain, and they sort of almost go out of their way to make their lives difficult. There was a lecture on it, I think, called The Revolt of the Clearing Classes, where he even quoted New Zealand nurses who said, we haven't had a wage increase for 10 years, and that's because you keep hiring managers who keep creating paperwork for us to do, and we don't need all of these managers.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, your raise is hidden somewhere in the paperwork if you know how to hire the correct bureaucrat to sign 20 dotted lines in 30 working days. There's a great episodes in Futurama about that mentality.
So, how do we feel about finishing up? We've gone way over time.
Oh, we really have. But, like I said, if people are still keen to watch, we've got just over 20 minutes of part 1 left. We're running on 1.25 times. So we'll sit back, chillax, smash out the rest of that, and then we'll let everybody bugger off.
Yep, I'm just going to go grab some dinner and I'll be right back.